Hi. Welcome to this episode of Your Human Design Coach podcast. Your quote for today: our strength will continue if we allow ourselves the courage to feel scared, weak, and vulnerable. And that comes from Melody Beatty. Beatty? Beatty. If you listened last week, you may have heard me say, welcome to episode 16. That's not true. This is episode 16. um, you know, Today I get to sit down with Vicky Cleary, who is going to be the third in a series of 3 episodes with the creators of the Strategic Women's Group. I'm leading a retreat with them on June 20th at the summer solstice retreat. When I think about Vicky, I think about presence and poise, as I'll mention in this episode. It's really a testament to that presence of what a great conversation we had, because as I was going into this episode, I'm coming off quite a week. I went down this week to see my, or I guess when you're hearing this, it'll be last week, but I got to go down and see my brother and sister-in-law in Austin. And the day before I left, I got food poisoning. I recorded this episode the day after I got back, and I was pretty tired, excited to talk to her, you know, trusting the process, but I was like, I hope that I can, show up as I need to be. And how about that quote for today? Allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. I was like, I'm not feeling 100%, but we're going to do this. And it was such a beautiful conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear from Vicky, her reflections, and some of the things she shared. The way that this retreat experience that we're offering on the 20th is something that's so exciting to her now, but also how that would have been supportive of her as she was starting to build her business, when she was in her younger years in her full-time job as a project manager. So some great insights from this conversation. So we're going to talk not just about the retreat, but about what it is to have an open spleen center and how that's helped her to kind of navigate how she shows up as she supports women in her business and in these strategic women's group experiences. And I think some really powerful conversations around filtering out other people's emotions and thoughts about what it is that we ourselves are doing. So, like, we know more and more everybody has an opinion. And how do we separate other people's stuff from how we know we want to show up and how it feels when we are, really living our unique blueprint? So excited for you to hear that. Want to tell you a bit about Vicky before we dive in. Vicky Cleary, PMP, is a leadership capacity coach who helps senior managers get promoted to director and lead well once they get there. Her work focuses on the one layer most leadership programs skip: the internal capacity to lead under pressure, regulate under stress, and perform consistently at the next level without burning out to get there. With 20 years of project management experience, including serving as director of a project management office in a corporate environment, Vicky brings a performance science lens to leadership development that is unlike anything else in this space. She is the founder of Uplift Healthy Lifestyle, LLC, president of PMI Wichita, a 2023 Women in Business honoree by the Wichita Business Journal, and a featured mentor at the 2026 Mentoring Monday. I'm inspired. I don't know about you. All right, let's dive in. Hi, Vicky. Welcome.
Hi.
So good to be here with you today. Love to have you just tell us about yourself. What does life look like for you?
Well, life looks like a lot, but I am the founder of Uplift Healthy Lifestyle, and I'm a leadership capacity coach, which means I help professionals to increase their capacity to handle the pressure that their job or even life can throw at them, so they can perform consistently without burning out in the process. But that's what I do for fun. That's what I do to keep myself busy. It's stuff that I love. It's a passion project, really. But I have a daughter who's in college, and she runs. So we have track meets like every other weekend when seasons are on, and um, yeah, we just usually have a lot going on.
You're a busy Manny Jen, that's for sure. I love following along and seeing all the things that you're doing and building and learning. And on your social media. It's so much fun. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about what brings
Mm.
us here today, really?
Yeah, it's a good question because I had to think about that because we've been kind of in each other's, orbit for a bit, for a while. I think we met through the Hive. Is that
Mhm.
did I remember
Yeah,
that right?
that's my memory.
Yeah, so that would have been a while ago, somewhere in the last 8 years, and then, um, you ended up participating in our community and our strategic women community. That's kind of the more recent, um, connection point, and so you've been following along with us for, wow, well over a year and a half now?
Yeah, that's exactly how I would say it. I feel like, you stand out to me. Joining the Hive when I was still teaching was such a enriching experience to be around all these women entrepreneurs. And, you stand out to me in my memory as somebody who made an impact for me, honestly, from the get go, of just your presence and your poise, which I still feel from you. But hearing you talk about what you do and, like, knowing that you were working full time, but building this and just hearing your passion come through. And then I think, like, I just always was kind of, like, peeping on what you were doing even when we weren't, like, that connected, but I was just always interested, you know? And yeah, then here in the last year and a half of this strategic women's group, which I know my listeners will be like, "Yes, we get it." It made a difference for you, but I really can't overstate it, of again, I would not be doing this work that I'm doing, like, as easefully, I think, without the support of that group. So
Yeah.
it's just it's felt meaningful to me that you were one of the first to kind of give me some inspiration, even if you didn't know that, and then that we're able to be more connected directly now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, watching you on your journey as you've been a part of our community it's been an inspiration for me to see, like, how much that it can actually have an impact on, getting someone going towards their goal and actually completing it and then, reaping the benefits out of it. So it's been inspiring and amazing to watch you with us as well.
Mm. Yeah, isn't that just it's the beauty of the community we're in Wichita. It's like big enough but small enough that we really get to know each other and really feel like we're rooting for each other. It's really special. Well, here we are on the Human Design Coach podcast. Tell me about your human design profile.
Oh, well, coming from a person who doesn't speak human design easily. So I know that I'm a manifesting generator.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me understand my ways. I mean, I mentioned that we're busy all the time. I'm always doing something, and sometimes I'm always doing something different. I tried this and I switch, and I tried that and I switch, and I thought, well, maybe I have undiagnosed ADHD or something, but once I learned more about my chart and you explained through how just some of the natural tendencies of a Manny Gen, uh, how we work, it really started to come together and make sense that, having my hands in all these different pots, is kind of what energizes me. Um, the authority thing, I think it's just called the authority, right? In the chart is emotional. And that piece for me was interesting because the premise behind it is you wait before you make a decision, or you wait for clarity. And, sometimes I'll feel pressure to have to make a decision in a moment, right? On a particular thing, whether it's, at work or in my business or what's for dinner sometimes. But knowing this, that the wait for clarity is such a useful tool for a manifesting generator, that has been helpful for me to practice, right? As I stop and think, oh, well, maybe I don't have to make a decision right now and I can wait. Then I notice the um the different, the idea starts to percolate a little bit more. I start to process through, what are some of the ups and downs that could happen on, whatever it is. So then I feel like I can come to a more grounded decision rather than it feeling like a rush decision. Um, so that's been interesting. Um, and then there's one last thing that when I was thinking about it, um, the open spleen. So the open spleen, so I've always felt like I well, I think I am. I don't know if how much these align, but like being an empath, right? And like I absorb other people's feelings, their emotions. So if I walk into a room and it's like real energetic, I'm like, "Hey, where's the party?" But if I'm talking with someone who's feeling really down, then I start to absorb that too, and I can start to feel that. But I think the way that you've explained the open spleen is that's part of it, and so kind of absorbing what's going on around, but then also being able to use that energy to say, okay, I can feel what's happening with a person or in a room, and as long as I'm being intentional, right, then I don't just, like, turn into those feelings myself, but then I can actually start to address it with the person or, tap into that positive energy with a group or what have you. So those are kinda my kind of big things around what I've learned just in having conversations with you.
Yeah, yeah, shout out to the open spleen. It doesn't get enough, hype on this podcast, so I'm so glad you brought that up 'cause I do wanna talk about what you said a little bit, because I think especially in light of, like, the work that you're doing with your coaching, the strategic women's group, and the, people you're working with, like, the spleen especially. I think human design in general just helps us realize how much we are affected by others' energy in positive and maybe, sometimes less helpful ways, and so being able to separate what's ours and what's others, and the spleen being associated a lot with, like, emotions and a lot with, like, sometimes fears, people's fears and worries. Like, working with people who are contemplating what's next, trying to transition, trying to maybe set goals that challenge them. I could see how that would be very helpful to understand because you're kind of walking into these spaces, not that you don't have fears, but, like, you're saying, "I'm here to help and support, and I have learned a lot, and let me be here for you." So being able to know that you may feel something, but, like, "Oh, that's not mine," and then I can identify it, and then maybe even be more impactful in that kind of identifying. And then another thing that popped in when you were talking about the Manny Gen energy, but then the wait for clarity is something I kinda haven't really thought about, which is that, sometimes we talk about those with the Manny Gen type, like, the struggle is expecting others to keep up.
Oh, yeah.
And so then having the emotional authority that says, "You can do," and when you're lit up, you are empowered to go, but, like, to get to the point of making the decision to start, you've gotta take some time. That's cool. It's kind of cool to me, like, thinking about how those are supportive of each other, of, like, I'm even more ready to go because I took a little time to really get settled in. This decision feels like I'm making it from that settled place of, like, "Yes, I'm ready to begin. Now let's go."
Yeah, one thing when you were talking about that, it took me way back, um, earlier in my career. Um, we were implementing a lot of process change, and I like the stuff that we were implementing, like, I loved it, right? And so I was like, "Hey, we're making this change, here we go." And then the week later, "Hey, now we're adding on another change," and a week later, we're adding another, so the team felt constantly in flux. But what would have been, I think, helpful to know then would have been, "Hey, not so much like I have to wait for clarity in terms of do I wanna make that change, but allowing myself to get the clarity to then guide the team along better." So more of like a change management piece, right? So that I could articulate the why so that we can understand what's going to happen rather than just jumping in and pulling the team along.
Yeah, yeah, it's that inform piece that lives with the manifesting generators and the manifestors of, like, you're gonna be able to do it, and it may just flow a little more easily if you just take a beat to say, "Hey, guys, this is why," exactly what you said. And then you mentioned if you're interested in talking about this, but you had mentioned to me at some point about kind of as you were working on some marketing, sort of using that in, some of the prompting of, tailoring your message within, like, ChatGPT. to that manifesting generator energy or some of those pieces of your chart. Can you speak a little bit to that strategy?
Well, it's always interesting. I've dabbled with putting in some different prompts to chat about, like, so my astrological chart is Pisces, and so, hey, I'm a Pisces. How would this start to show through in my marketing materials so that it feels more authentic, right? It's not just me talking in general like a textbook. And then when we did the human design chart, I did the same thing. I put my chart in and I said, here's my chart. How are some things that I'm already doing? How do these work together? How do they resonate? Or what am I not doing? Right? Where am I getting away from some of those natural tendencies? Um, because just like with my marketing, it's just like with all the other things. I will start something, I'll try something like, oh, let's do a series. Series and Manny Gens maybe don't work well. I don't know. But yeah, I plan a series, like a 6-part series, and halfway through, I'm ready to go on to something else. So, so I'll put
I
in
was
my,
gonna say, do you get bored halfway? Yeah.
I don't, not bored, but it's just like, it, I just figured it was the squirrel brain syndrome, right? It's like, well, now there's something else that I want to talk about. And so I'm moving on. So, keep the series short, like 3 parts maybe instead of 6. Um, but being able to use kind of those natural tendencies in the prompting with, whatever AI tool, the stuff that comes out it feels more genuine. It feels more natural, more authentic for me than if I just said, hey, I want to talk about, stress management, or I want to talk about leadership. It's leadership under this idea of being a Manny Gen, and we like to do all the things, right? So it starts to help me put together a story that is more real for me.
I think within your sharing of that, of the series piece, it, like, makes me think of, like, a good rule of thumb for Manny Gens is, like, build in a place for shifts, like, permission to shift. It doesn't mean you can't. I mean, we this is funny, this came up for us in our team session the other day with, Kristi and Jenna, but, like, they were like, "Vicky, you're a Manny Gen, you're so step by step and methodical," but it's like, "Yes, I'm a project manager, I know how to do that, but I can also operate and know when it's time to go, even if maybe there's a little bit left that I planned for. I know when it's time to shift and being able to kinda honor both those natures, I think is cool. Well, I think those are wonderful reflections, and I think this is helpful too. I just got off an introductory session with someone who is brand new to human design, and I could kind of feel in the session that, like, they were sort of trying to feverishly take notes and then listen and then get it, and I was like, it was we had kind of a moment of, like, a reset of, like, I'm like, "You can softly take notes." Like, it really isn't about having to know it all. It's about how it feels. It's about what jumps out and how you integrate it. That's where it becomes lived. If it's just trying to know it all, like, then it becomes hard to live it. So I think that reflection of, like, what has been on your mind and feeling relevant could be supportive for those who are newer to it, and because there's a lot of places to go, but it's okay to start with just what feels the most impactful right
Yeah,
now.
for sure. Well, and that's why really me just honing in on those 3 things that we've already talked about, right? The open spleen and the uh, emotional authority, like, and just being a Manny Gen, like, just those 3 things. I mean, I'll be good for a whole year trying to work through these and understand how, it plays out in all these different ways. So,
Okay, well, I'd love to shift and just talk a bit about the Strategic Women's Group, and I'm excited to hear your perspective because you're kind of the square one, like, where it all really started to bring these other fabulous women together, so I'd love to just hear about this brainchild of yours and give us a
yeah.
little more depth to that.
Being able to reflect on it, like, I just got goosebumps because it really is so neat to see you have an idea and you connect with others, and then it carries through to fruition and then growing, and just to be able to see that journey over the past year and a half has been really awesome. And then to hear Jenna's take on it and Kristi's take on it. Like, it's really neat. But from my perspective, so, being an entrepreneur, it's a solopreneur, right? Like, it's just me, and it's challenging, right? It's a big thing to start a business and try to make all these connections and get clients and do all the thing, make money out of it, right? Ultimately, but um, one of the things that I find in the past anyway, I've been working on it, but it's really easy for an entrepreneur to feel like everyone else is uh competition, right? So I'm a coach, you're a coach, there's all these coaches. And so, you're competition and this other person's competition. So it feels like, we're working against each other. But through what I learned working at an ad agency for 14 years, we've got creative teams. You have to work together, right? To do, and for any team, honestly, not just creative teams, but you have to learn to work together. You have to learn to collaborate. And so I started to think about how can I make my entrepreneurial journey more collaborative? How can I stretch myself and find some other people that I can work alongside rather than always just being, me, myself, and I? And so when I started to think about that, I at the beginning it was maybe Christmas time to New Year's that I was like, man, I really want to do a goals workshop because, setting goals and then, working on them through the whole year, it's something that I do. I believe in it, and I think that, it's not for everyone, but I think that people do get good benefit out of it. It's like, how can I do a goals workshop? I mean, I could just set one up and, invite people, but I thought, you know what? I could create so much more impact if I'm able to pull some other people in to do it with me, right? Different perspectives in the training, being able to reach different people, that kind of thing. So, like, who can I actually collaborate with, to do something like this? And of course, I was thinking, well, somebody whose business is adjacent to mine, so it isn't like we're literally competing for the same customer. Although, honestly, that isn't as much of a thing as we think. But um, I thought of Jenna because she's a career coach. She works with people on their careers, finding a new position, um, resumes, and I'm probably like really oversimplifying what she does, but um, I work with professionals, and sometimes they are in that transition. Sometimes they are help needing to find something else or needing to work through something. The DISC assessment, she works with that on communication, how they work. So those two things I felt were in the same arena without being directly, you know, in tied
There
together.
there's a
We're not
it's
doing
like
the
a
same
Venn
thing.
di there's a Venn
Yes,
diagram. There's
yes,
overlap,
exactly,
but yeah.
exactly. Um, and the way that I learn about Jenna, she presented at a thread. I was in the thread for cohort 7. So shout out to the thread. But Jenna was presenting and I'm like, "Oh, I really like her energy," right? And it kinda stuck with me. So when I came circled back around and I was thinking about this, it's like, I remember Jenna because of the energy, which I gravitate towards people's energy, right? Maybe that's a normal thing for people, but I notice it strongly. Your energy is amazing, and I want you in, around me and doing, what I'm doing. So, uh, anyway, thought of Jenna. I said, you know what? I'm just going to reach out to her, ask her to coffee. And she was like, yeah, let's go to coffee. And in that one session, like we were already just like connected and on the same wavelength. And it was awesome. So we were starting to build this goals workshop. And then also was thinking about, okay, if we can have this energy with just the two of us, if could there be another person? Is there someone else? And Kristi, I know because our kids went to school together. And my daughter actually took her assessment for students. And so I got to see firsthand the work that she does and like listening to some of that stuff in terms of my daughter's, profile and like her natural tendencies, her strengths and all this stuff is just like, wow, like if for a professional, because I know Chrissy does this for professionals now too, but for a professional to know that, that would be really helpful, really awesome to know these things. And so just like, Forrest Gump would say, right? We're peas and carrots.
Yes. Aw, that's so sweet. Oh my gosh. Yeah, energy. The 3 of your energy together is very impactful. But I wanna come back to quickly when you said, like, competition, the shift from competition to collaboration mindset, because I think that I wanna acknowledge that because I think that's kind of vulnerable for you to share that, but it's so relatable. We've all had that, whether it's conscious or subconscious. There's a robust group of women entrepreneurs in our city. So there's a lot of people who are coaching and kind of, if we're talking about the Venn diagram, there's overlap. So I think everyone has probably had that thought of some point of like, I want to be supportive. How do I do that? And then still make sure that I'm successful in the ways that I need to be, like monetarily and otherwise. So I'd love to just hear, like you said, you've kind of been working on it. And I think you expressed it beautifully of how it's benefited you in the strategic women's collaboration. But like, what has that shift of competition to collaboration, like, what has that given you?
Just in our collaboration alone, the number of women that I've been exposed to, because I wouldn't have already known some other women that Kristi and Jenna each have brought into our community. So just expanding the network, like that's been a really amazing benefit. Um, I think also my work with those two has, maybe it's softened me. I don't know, maybe that's a good way to say it, but I think that my work as a project manager have to you have to have a certain sense of, not control, but like an authority, right? So you have to kind of manage a room, you have to, guide a team. But when it comes to this collaboration, I don't feel that. And also, like, I shouldn't feel that. I shouldn't be trying to have authority over Christy and Jenna, right? That would be a very weird dynamic. But it is different, right? And so we really are. It is a different type of energy that I get to tap into than when I am a project manager or when I am, just doing my own entrepreneur thing for my business on its own. So I think that's an interesting benefit as well, to be able to just tune into a different part of me that, that's collaborative energy, right? What's another word? I don't know, but that really is just like we're truly just working together to come, and it's not like, well, my idea is right and your idea is wrong. It's none of that stuff. It's just, well, we all three have ideas. So which one feels right for what we're trying to do? And we have a conversation. It's so different than my experience with, kind of corporate stuff as well. It's not always that way, just because people haven't had a chance to practice it usually, but I get to practice it with this group. And that I think is a really big benefit for me.
The shift in, yeah, being in a different space and the way you can then are free to show up differently, but it takes some time to feel into that. I can feel that for sure. It was like moving from teaching to coaching, where I was used to kind of at the front of a classroom positioning myself as the expert, as the authority, whereas with coaching it's all about, no, the person that's sitting in front of me is the authority. I had to learn how to, change my hats out.
Yes.
And that it felt better when I would do that, but it took work, it took practice, as you said.
Yeah.
And I think I relate to what you're saying because when I first got into the entrepreneurial space, for me, it was networking. Like I always sort of, I think I misunderstood networking, which was, when do I get to say my thing? When I get to tell them what I'm doing. I think it was my husband who heard this on a podcast, but just the line was like, always be giving. And the idea that networking is, let me just listen to you. Let's connect. What are you doing? What am I doing? How can I support you? Maybe you can support me. Maybe we can just cheer each other on. But like, even it's not necessarily always like that give and take. Sometimes it is, "Oh, yeah, let me connect you." I don't do that, but I know someone great who does,
Right.
and then you just get to keep expanding that network, and I find that, number 1, it takes off almost all the pressure. It makes it fun and just about listening and getting to know people. And then this isn't why you do it, but like it almost always comes back around. Like it just creates a feeling of we're sort of all in this together, which is
Yes.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that always be giving. So I had a similar experience with the networking thing because I would go into, networking events and I'd be like, okay, do I have my elevator pitch? Do I know how I'm going to talk about what I do and who I help? And, ha- it would stress me out because, I feel like I have to know this line perfectly and, to be able to explain what I do perfectly. But the more that I started to tap into, I don't tell anybody about what I do. If I go into it if I meet a person, I'm gonna try to ask them 5 questions, right? Usually it's like, who you are, what do you do? And then tell me more about that or whatever. So the leading with questions for me has been super helpful rather than trying to feel like I have to be the one, let me tell you who I am. No, I'm just there to figure out who you all are, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's like the giving can just be giving someone space to get to share what they do or what's on their mind or their fears, it creates space for I think some really meaningful interactions. Okay, fun. Christy and Jen and I, talked also about the team session that we all did. Anything you would want to add that stood out to you from looking at how your 3 human design charts kind of complement each other?
Yeah, what's funny, I think I said this in the team session, but I kind of imagined before the meeting, I was like, "Oh, the 3 of us, our charts are gonna overlay and like, I don't like, is there's no, like, a perfect human design chart, but I was just thinking, like, we will overlay and all the things that are open will be closed, and it will just be like this full chart, and I was like, "Well, that's not necessarily how it works," but I feel like there was a lot of pieces that, we didn't actually overlay them, but through the conversation, I was like, "Oh, really, we do fill in a bit more, um, of the areas for each other."
Yeah.
So that thought it was just funny that I thought that, and I'm just like, "Well, you know, things you don't know before you know them."
No, I think that's really, like, sweet, though, is just the feeling. Number 1, you're correct, like, you do and we didn't even get into everything. We just kinda hit some of the high level, like, here are the strengths you bring out to each other and then just in each other, and then being aware of maybe a few of the gaps. But, like, if we got into all the channels and all the gates, like, there would be even more. But I think it shows what the 3 of you have expressed, which is that you're just together, you feel that you make each other better and you bring out those things. And so,
Yeah.
um, I think I think that that's not an unfair, expectation or feeling for sure.
Kinda along those lines, filling in for each other, but just like for any team, like, we're the sum of our parts, right? And so if I'm weak in a particular area, Jenna or Kristi kinda help fill that in. Um, and I forget now, I think Jenna is the generator. Did I get that right? And then Kristi and I are both Manny Gens. And so Jenna, at least, well, when it comes to decision making, and there were probably some others, but that is a place where she makes us a bit stronger because Kristi and I will be like, well, do we want to do this? Do we want to do that? Do we want to pick that day? Do we want to pick this space? And Jenna's like, look, we just need to pick this day. This works for me. Let's go. So, not that we never have conversation about it, but she brings the generator energy, but also is like just a bit more decisiveness
Yeah,
that she
she's
brings
got that
to.
sacral
Yes.
gut thing that she can go, "Yep, this is it. Let's go."
Yep. And there've been a few times she's like, listen, you guys, I feel like she's thinking, you guys are just back and forth, just land on something.
Oh, yes. That's so funny. Yeah, and it's kinda goes back too to what we were just talking about when you're talking about, like, the filling in of all those lines and the centers and everything. It's like then you get to also, like, continue to expand that because 'cause you're bringing people together. So, like, certainly when we all come together at these things, like, really things are flowing. So that's neat to think about as well that you've created a container, a space where we can kind of have access to, those gifts when we're together.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. And then anything you'd like to say, your thoughts, your excitement, your expectations for our June 20th summer solstice retreat?
Mm. All the excitement. This event that we're putting together, I read it on paper, right, and in our discussions, and I'm like, this is just gonna feel so good," right? Like, I get tapping into that energy again, um, creating an environment where, this group of women who's gonna join us on this day gets to come together, be at ease, and be able to tap into, like, learning. So we're gonna learn a little bit about ourselves through the human design imposter syndrome and how that shows up for us and how do we work through it. And then also outside of human design, some of our other natural strengths and tendencies. Um, and we get to use all that information to then reflect back on how the first half of our year has been in working towards our goals, and then we get to think, okay, if these now that I know these things, how can I apply them to the second half of the year so that I can make more progress toward my goals? Or if I need to pivot, what does that look like, right? Because we should never have to feel um, locked in to a particular goal or particular way to get there. But the information can always inform, like, where do we go next? But that paired with just the energy of, essential oils and having yoga and a chance to meditate and journal and have some space where it's not just a day crammed full of information. So all of these things is just like the way that this day starts to feel as we start putting it together is just amazing. This is how I think of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Something that popped in my head as you were talking. Um, I imagine as you do this work with strategic women and you have these events, like your earlier entrepreneurial self comes to mind. Like how would an event like this have been supportive to you, 8 years ago as you were more in the beginning stages? What could you say to those people who might be considering it?
Yeah, that is a really good question. Well, honestly, the biggest thing I think is just the community, is having like-minded women, right? Regardless of what your goal is, you're working towards a goal. You're working towards something. And because we have in our community, we have entrepreneurs, but we also have professionals, right? And so different backgrounds, but we're all working towards something. And so for all of us to come together, have conversations, and learn from each other, I think in every one of our quarterly check-ins that we had, um, somebody would say, "Well, I was struggling with this thing." And another one would be like, "You know what? I actually have a person that you could talk to, or I went through that myself, and here's what I did." So just having the forum to be able to learn from each other, I think that is maybe one of the biggest pieces that, if somebody's thinking about whether I should come, right? It could be that because you're all in on your goals or what have you, but it's not just about, oh, I have a goal, so I need to go to this thing and focus on my goal. It's focusing on yourself, but then also learning and growing with a community.
Kind of the through line of what we've been talking about so far. It's like we're better together.
Yes.
And then we get to go off and, even if we're going off solo, like we're taking that with us. Yeah. I can't wait. All right. Well, our last minutes together, maybe can we shift into a little light coaching?
Sure.
Okay, great.
So this is where I get to be even more vulnerable. But one of the things in understanding the manifesting generator energy, the way I'm wired, I guess, and knowing, that I like to have my hands in a lot of different things. I like to be doing a lot of different things. But I take that information, I reflect back on um, having a career, right? Which I love my career in project management. But I also have started a business. I'm an entrepreneur, and I also love that work. Um, and so I think, if we think about societal norms, of like, you pick a path and you go do a thing. You have work or you're an entrepreneur or whatever. But, if when I get asked about like, well, are you gonna quit your job so that you can do this? I'm like, well, not necessarily. Like, why would I love what I do during, like it's being a project manager and doing the work within project management is such a great way for me to share some of my natural tendencies of, they may not show through in my chart, but they have other tendencies of, organization and keeping people on a path, and lots of other things. But like it helps me tap into that energy. My entrepreneurship helps me tap into different energy, my creative side. I get to relate with different types of people. So all that to say, I feel like then like the question or maybe the coaching is like how does one navigate those people, those norms or whatever that say, well, you should have a single path, or maybe you should think about choosing one or the other.
Why does that feel important to you right now?
I honestly feel like I've had several instances of like these conversations of, well, what would you ever would you ever do this to do that, or would you ever stop that to focus here? And I mean, in those conversations, like I don't necessarily have a feeling that I want to do that. I don't know how else to say it right, but it doesn't feel like a need. Like, why would I choose?
When people kind of make those comments to you, is maybe the struggle or the tension between, like, I feel really settled in what I'm doing, but then when they say that, it makes me feel a different way, and there's some tension there?
Yeah, I think it goes, but people want to put other people in a box, right? They want to be able to say, well, yeah, you do this, and I do this, and I do that, and I do this other thing. So there's not one box. Well, it's a Vicky box. I fit into my
Right.
own box. But yeah, so it's like, well, there's these conversations of like, well, it seems like you would want to choose, and I'm like, well, I don't know that that's actually a necessity.
Yeah. And what would you walk away with today to help you know we'd been successful at looking at this?
That's a good question. Because the thing that comes to mind would be, oh, do I have permission to not have to fit into a single box? But then as a coach myself, I'm like, well, do I need permission? you know? So my brain is like when I talk to someone like you, it's like, well, I I know the answer, but at the same time, I don't always feel like I know the answer. And so being able to have a conversation like this sometimes makes me feel like I have now been given permission, even though it's not. You don't need to give me permission to do the 15 things that I want to do. But
Yeah. Yeah, to me, what it sounds like is that you don't need the permission to do the things. It's more what to do with maybe the stuff that comes up when people question or try to give advice that's well-meaning but not appropriate. But tell me if that sounds right or clarify
yeah,
that.
no, I think that's, yeah, because my natural tendency, like when those things come up, being able to explain to a person that what I just said of like, I don't feel like I have to choose that, that people don't get that, if that makes sense. They're just like, no, I don't get it. You, it seems like you should have a direction. So then it makes a weird conversation. It's just like, I don't know what else to tell you.
So it just sounds like, you are feeling good about you know, the exploring different things and the doing different things, but it's just in those conversations, maybe just being able to feel a little more settled, when other people's emotions and feelings kind of come into the picture and just, recognizing those maybe aren't yours and having a tool to let it go so that you can focus on what you want to do. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, you saying that, it just literally resonated with me that when those people, like, in those conversations and they're having that energy of, "You have to choose one," I feel like I'm absorbing that energy to some extent, which then is making me feel like, "Oh, should I choose?" But, like, no, I don't have to. Because when I come away from that, I'm like, "Well, what just happened?" Like, no.
Yeah, well, it's like Vicky in this conversation, you're sort of like plugging the retreat. Because everything you're saying kind of is bring when as I look at your chart and we'll pop Vicky's chart up here, you know, it it pings on several centers. So let's just like kind of touch on those briefly, and just see let me know what kind of sparks and feel free to interrupt me as I'm going. But it's like, let's start with the spleen because we've said it and you feel like you have a good feeling about that. But like I wonder, for some people that may feel deeply uncomfortable or even scary to think about doing more than one thing. Why don't you just do one thing and do it well? It's pinging on their own fears. So, that picking up on others and then that feels kind of uncomfortable. And then the open head and mind that you have is such a beautiful thing. It's so supportive in all these things you're doing because it's being open to inspiration, ideas, things that are flowing in. But, sometimes the shadow side of it is feeling like all the ideas and inspirations that come in from others, from the things that we're encountering, feeling like we have to act on those. Or if we're not, the open mind may be, well, that's an interesting idea, but I'm not sure. And feeling like we have to be sure right away. So, like, the wisdom of those two pieces is just recognizing like you're a sponge for ideas and inspiration, but you still get to lean into that authority piece to know what's really yours to say yes to.
Yeah.
And so, like, other people are giving you these ideas and things, and like you're taking them in, but they don't all deserve the urgency.
Right, right. Yeah, and that wait for clarity piece that where it's for me, it's like, just let it percolate. Just let it simmer in the background and see if it does have any legs. Um, yeah, and a lot of times from those conversations later, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the open root adds on the piece of like, where you're feeling maybe other stress. And like, then there's an added stress piece of some of those ideas of like, a pressure. We talked about the pressure sandwich the other day of like making that happen. Essentially, and then, well, and then there's the open identity and will too, which is the open identity, I think is a really beautiful open center, which is there's a fluidity to it. You may find yourself having the gift of like being able to show up in different spaces in these different environments that you're in, whether they're work related or personal, and kind of knowing how to be in that moment. But sometimes associated with the open identity, again, is that societal pressure of like, what's your purpose though? Like, what's the one thing? And sometimes for those with the open identity, it's like, it's not a one thing, it shifts, the permission to shift. And then the will can get tied up in that because taking in kind of all these pieces, others' feelings, emotions, fears, pressures, and saying, well, this is making me feel a certain kind of way. Like it's making me kind of question where I'm at. And so the wisdom of the open will is to say, I can have all of these different desires and pursue some of these different things. And it lights me up. It feels true to me. I'm checking in. I'm having clarity. And I don't have to prove it to you to show that I have value as an entrepreneur, as a project manager, as a mom, as a person. But sometimes the shadow of the will is like, well, I don't know, you better prove that you can do it all really well, or you better prove that you know what you're doing. Like make sure you give them the perfect sound bite
Yeah.
to go back
Yeah.
to the action. When I wonder if maybe the action is Kristi and I just talked about this of like sometimes that is painful to feel that self-worth that may fluctuate. We want it to be more consistent, but being able to sort of have some kind of ritual or reset to rest in it and recognize that it doesn't mean you have to rush out to prove value or change something or whatever. So what does that bring to mind? That's a lot of talking from me, but what does that bring to mind for you?
Um, well, I really like that because I think, I mean, just through conversations, like not just for me, but a lot of women feel that their worth and their value is tied to a specific thing. And so for somebody, asking me, it's like well, are you going to choose? So my value to you or to whatever is based on that choice versus the value I bring is not tied to either of those because I have skills and I have ideas and I have value that I bring regardless of the situation. So I really like that. And the thing that you had said about being able, I forget which, I think it was the open identity, being able to show up differently in different rooms. Um, I really like that too, and I feel that, like, so when I teach yoga on Saturday mornings, like, I step into that and I'm a yoga teacher, right? And that is different energy than when I am leading a project meeting, right? Very different energies, or very different than when I'm working with a client, and again, very different when we're in our, community, in the girls' night, goals night, or we're doing the goal setting workshops, or even the retreat. Like, all of those require different energy, and I can feel that, but at the same time, it feels easy for me to flex and to do, right? And to show up as the person that's needed for that space.
I love what you just said, and I wonder if there's anything in that that is the response when somebody says, "Well, why can't you just pick one thing?"
Yeah, no, that's actually really good.
So, thinking to that original topic of it's the maybe the tension that arises in those conversations, what do you feel like is the, next small sweet action you need to take to maybe cut some of that tension or change that experience for yourself?
Mhm. Well, I mean, those conversations don't happen daily, right? So it's not like, I don't think like a realistic action would be for the next conversation. Now this is what I would say. I feel like it's more about me, the stuff that we just talked about, being able to um, reflect on it, journal on it, start to make that more a part of how I would naturally articulate in an actual conversation, right? So, the value, being able to flex in different rooms, having a good understanding of myself about how I feel about those things, so that when it comes up in conversation, it just is like, look, this is what it is.
Yeah, and I heard you say it at the very top of like when I'm in these coaching conversations, it's like what comes to mind is, do I need to get permission for this? And I wonder what the answer is. Do you?
I feel like I just need to give myself permission.
Mm.
I feel like that's, I think that's true for a lot of us. We feel that we need an external validation, and really it's internal. So for myself, it's an internal validation.
Well, and what's beautiful about the centers, something I'm excited to talk about on the 20th, is that oftentimes, people get sometimes like, Why don't I have more colored in? And like, there's so many white. And what does that mean? Like, we talk about these are the lessons we're here to learn. But the beautiful thing about them is that as we learn more and as we, put these whether it's rituals, routines, reflections in place to kind of make sure we're living from the wisdom of the open center, then those lessons are what we're here to bring to the world. So in you continuing to work through of like when somebody questions, you remember or you have the ritual that says, I'm not designed to prove my value. You give that gift to others
Mhm.
because it seems like, you've kind of already touched on like when people are asking that to you, like they're kind of asking it to them, it's their own fear, it's their own thing, whatever it is. So the more you are in the wisdom of that open center, the more kind of wisdom you bring to others as well. And I'm already seeing you doing that, in this group. You do it beautifully. So
That just gave me goosebumps the way you said that whole piece. I mean, our own experiences, we learn, we grow from them, and then be able to take that to other people and for other people to learn and grow because of them, like, that I think is that would be, like, the one purpose. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a purpose to be a project manager or to be a coach per se, but to be able to help others learn from my story, from my learnings, yeah, that was
yeah.
powerful.
Oh, well, you're doing it. And your vulnerable, like, what this has been a beautiful episode of reflections. Like, your vulnerability in this is very felt. And, like, again, you are creating this space for women. Like, women are having this. So, like, it's really special and meaningful to be able to be here with you and do it with you and for you. So, thank you
Mhm.
for
Well,
doing that.
thank you. Thank you for having me here and for being able to, yeah, have this conversation. It was really good. It was amazing.
Good. Well, I'm so glad. Well, anything else that you'd like to share? Anything that you're up to? Where can we find you?
Um, well, I mean, the biggest thing that I'm up to is planning the event, the retreat for the 20th. So, the you can find that if you go to strategicwomen, WOMEN, HQ.com. That'll take you to the page. And if you scroll all the way down, you can see all the events, including the retreat. So you can get registered for that. Or, if you can't make it that day, if you have a business, you want to be a sponsor, we would love that as well. But yeah, I mean, that's the big thing right now. So strategicwomenhq.com.
Wonderful. Okay, Vicky. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you.